Let me show you what I discovered over the last 48 hours. So, going back to February 24th, there was a report published by the Financial Stability Board, and this was given to G20 nations. In this report, it laid out 3 goals that they look to enact over the next few months. Number 1 being extended real-time gross settlement. This means that now banks in the country will no longer have to wait over the weekend to process deposits. Then we also have legal regulation. This is the anti-money laundering, KYC discussions. We saw that coming. Number 3, though, and this is the one we're going to focus on. It's the finalization of ISO harmonization. They're no longer pulling any punches about this. It's coming. So, with that urgency, I had to put the XDC video on pause, and I needed to bring this to you before the 20th. Now, what's coming out of this report also with those 3 goals are 2 brand new task force that are going to be put together by the Financial Stability Board, the Committee on Payment Market Infrastructure, so the CPMI, and as well as the IMF and the World Bank. The IMF and World Bank will be responsible for pushing the agenda to G20 nations like the US, Europe, Australia, China, so forth and so on. This was reinforced by another article that I read from the OMFIF. We've talked about them before. They're basically restating the fact that the Financial Stability Board and G20 nations are doubling down on this ISO migration. So, if you've been holding ISO coins for 11 months, some people have come out and told me they've been holding since 2018. This is the time you've been waiting for. It's about to heat up, ladies and gentlemen. After reading the OMFIF article, that led me to the PMPG migration strategy, or the Payment Markets Practice Group. They laid out a brand new updated timeline for the ISO migration. We have more than just SWIFT turning on in March, ladies and gentlemen. Alongside SWIFT, we will see the Target 2, Euro 1, and Step 1 payment systems also go live this month. These are the payment systems that encompass the entire European Union. Now, in Q4 of this year, right around November, the CHIPS payment service will then be on ISO. CHIPS is the one of 3 US payment systems that will be activated over the next 2.5 years. CHIPS is going to come in first. This will be, of course, after the activation of the FedNow instant payment system and before the FedWire Fund service gets migrated over to ISO in November of 2025. So it appears that they're going to kick on CHIPS first in order for the instant payment system and the FedWire Fund service to then run on top of that. In addition, they go into the high value markets. So we're talking about the larger economies here: Australia, Canada, Hong Kong. Australia is launching in March. Canada enters phase 1 in March. Hong Kong is set to go live in October of this year. Japan is already live. Very interesting. They've been live since 2015. However, they have plans on upgrading this year. Can you imagine what that's going to look like? They just re-permitted the trading of stablecoins over there. That's very interesting. And then we have one more, the United Kingdom. They're going to be kicking off in June of this year. So over the next 3 months, guys, we have 40% of the economy shifting over to ISO messaging over the next 3 months. Let me continue, because we also get into the smaller economies. And the number 1 on that list, Brazil, fitting. And what's funny is that they were already on ISO going back in 2020. And when you look back at the timeline of events for Brazil, again, that's why I kept your attention on that beautiful, beautiful land. It's because they have been making use of these new payment standards. Remember, it's going to bring faster settlement. It's going to bring interoperability. That's the key here. Outside of Brazil, we also have Israel coming in November of this year. And here's an interesting one: Kazakhstan. They also kick off this month. Now, the reason why I say that's so interesting is because we covered a story just last month. Binance, Kazakhstan, central bank digital currency. They followed that up with a report that states Binance is going to be a crucial component to Kazakhstan's future banking system. Binance. Hey, also coming in March, New Zealand, And then we have Taiwan in November of 2023, later this year. Of course, the countries that are already live, though: China, India, South Africa, Japan, we mentioned, Brazil. Mexico is still to be determined. And then this country here is to be concluded. This is how it was written in the documentation. So to me, that indicates that they are further along in the discussion process than Mexico. We're talking about Ukraine. And you want to know what's even more interesting about that? Another country has to be concluded next to their name as well: Russia. So much going on, guys. And I just want to put this point out here before we get into the actors, the specific names of banks that are going to be involved. I do have that for you, and as well as the areas of coverage for this migration. I just want to put this out here. I do not think it a coincidence that we are seeing all of these bank failures during the migration, during this time period. It makes perfect sense, because the core problem with these banks is not being able to clear settlement. It's not being able to move money. The ISO migration is going to fix those problems. But as with everything, you need a problem and you need a reaction so you can come in with that solution. That's the name of the game, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's get into the actors. All right, all of the players involved. Now, you can see the list here. It's quite extensive. It would make this video way too long. So I've highlighted a couple names that I'm going to share with you because they've come up in our recent content before. Australian Stock Exchange. We've seen how Australia has leaned heavily into the digital currency classification side of things. They have set up a regulatory body that is going to classify cryptocurrencies based on use case. Bank of Italy, which we know just came off of that deal with Algorand for bank insurance guarantees. Now, when I reported on that, I gave you guys what I understood of the situation at the time. After reading through this documentation in the last 48 hours, I now get what that means. All right? Of course, I got it in the video, but I have a deeper understanding now. Those bank insurances, they're also going to be running on ISO. All right? Like I said, we'll get to that coverage in a second. We also have China's UnionPay. This brings up Red Date Technologies, and it also brings up the Universal Digital Payment Network that is using Hedera's token service for its token issuance. So yeah, it's a chance that that network is also going to be running ISO messaging. And if that's the case, again, like I said, everything is changing from this point and is going to center around APIs. We also have the DTCC, which is the Depository Trust Clearing Company. This company is responsible for moving any stock, any asset that you trade on an open market, any 24 hours a day. That's basically what they are in charge of. They have trillions of dollars under management, and all of it is now about to be running on ISO. Now let's get into the coverage of this new ISO. We're talking about securities, stock exchanges, and custodians. This made me think of all of the crypto custodians that we see popping up in the market. And it also is going to cover trade finance. Now, in the XDC video, we're really going to dig into this one. All right. I am coming to understand what, the trade finance gap even is. I did not know that small to medium-sized enterprises, make up 80% of this economy, and two, without proper funding, you start to see things like, I don't know, supply chain shortages, because the companies that are moving these supplies around, products, goods, and services, they're not getting funding. And guess where they're not getting the funding from? The banks. And why can't they get funding from banks? Because the banks can't keep up with the settlement speed. They can't keep up with the settlement time. In a lot of cases, these companies in trade finance, they need to get funding to push a product from one country to the next, and they need to do it in 14 days. You can't do that with traditional banking. And that's the problem. Over the last 3 years, the trade finance gap has increased to north of $2 trillion. And that's just the lowball estimate. These numbers don't account for the individual intricacies of, employees on the trade finance system or supply chains, and what if a product loss, theft. So it's so many other factors that are not being accounted into that true $2 trillion number, that other estimates are putting that number at $30 trillion. So, like I said, in the XDC video, we're going to dig into that, because XDC, now I get why they're alongside the Trade Finance Initiative and the IFTA and organizations like that. Totally get it. We're also going to be getting into ISO is going to cover derivatives and trading of Forex markets. At this point, guys, you can pretty much see this is going to cover everything. It's going to change everything. All right. Now, another one is the retail. So e-commerce, credit, debit cards, all of those good things. And that makes me think of crypto.com. Binance has a card, Coinbase has a card, Uphold has a card, KuCoin wants to release a card. They're going to have to be able to read ISO messaging, because the banks that crypto users, okay, now the way it's set up, you have to get your funds, your fiat currency from your bank, move it into your crypto account. This is a very distinctive relationship that is also very fragile, because if the bank can't process the transaction, you can't get your crypto to the exchange. That's the issue here. And I think that is what was the fear that everybody, the other influencers, were getting at here when they were saying that the banks are trying to block out crypto companies. It's not because they're forcibly doing this, it's because crypto is a technology that they can't match. Once Bitcoin came into power and came into existence in 2009, that started to change thinking. All right. Once they figured out that this ledger system is highly efficient and we can put all of our financial information on it, everybody started to change their path. This was 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. The Crypto Untold video. Yeah, check that out. It breaks it all down. Now, let's get into what I think is the new list. All right, ladies and gentlemen, because things are, and I'll say it again, everything has changed, because the reoccurring theme here in the research that I have pulled out over the last 48 hours is application programming interfaces. That's what they want here. All right. The banks that are able to create these are going to be the ones that are going to survive in the next era. So the same can be said for the crypto projects that we are following. So with this new line of thinking and my understanding of what ISO actually is, I started to look for ISO 20022 APIs. And of course, the very first one to pop up was the XCC network. And of course, that popped up through Impel, which brought up Fluid Finance, the US Plus stablecoin, Federated Member Banks, the guy who invented central bank digital currencies. We've gone over that story. So it's obvious XDC is in a very powerful position. Again, deep diving into that one in that XDC video. I also discovered the Ripple and XRP ISO relationship. This is the confirmation here, guys. So, yes, Ripple is ISO compatible. Compliant isn't the right word. The compliancy would fall under other ISO standards, kind of like what crypto.com has with security and information technology. They are compliant with the ISO standards for those fields. When it comes to payments, what you want to be is compatible. And Ripple, through RippleNet, is compatible with ISO. Recently, though, the XRP ledger now has that same functionality. And I'll tell you how it happened. A few months back, we were reporting on the Ripple CBDC Innovate Challenge. This was after Thanksgiving of last year, right? They announced their winners in December. And from their winners, there were a few applications that will now be running, that are currently now running on the XRP ledger. One of those applications that I said would win because of the ISO situation won. And now that crypto ISO interop is the name of the application. And because of that application, you can now compute ISO standard messaging on the XRP ledger. This is the big one. If you're holding XRP, this is the big one because this means that the XRP ledger, the XRP token, is compatible with ISO, as well as the company Ripple. Whoa. So if you're holding Ripple stock in XRP, you're about to be rich. I want to hang out with you. Another token that is always brought up in this discussion is Stellar Lumens. And when I did my first ISO video, I could not find the concrete connection to ISO for Stellar. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can gladly say that is no longer the case. Stellar has an application on its blockchain called PayStream. PayStream. Simply, PayStream is compatible with ISO messaging. And you can see that right here. So if you zoom out and look at Stellar's entire ecosystem, we have MoneyGram, we have USDC Circle, and then didn't they just activate a UN funded refugee program in Ukraine? I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. But another project that is also always in this conversation is the Quant Network. And this one was pretty much the easiest to run through. You guys know I did that full breakdown of the Quant Network, the founder, the TC307 ISO certification, which also plays a factor here. It does, because the TC307 provides people an alternative to ISO 20022 that through Quant's Overledger Gateway will connect them to those compatible messages. That's the power of the Quant Network for you in a nutshell, is that Overledger Gateway. Now, some surprising names that popped up when I did this research was Cosmos. This is an interesting story because I remember a few months back, a couple of the inner core, my inner circle, they told me, hey, look at Cosmos. Check out what they got going on. And I was like, all right, because I was so used to seeing the Cosmos SDK on other projects. I'm like, all right, let me find out why. Well, sure enough, ladies and gentlemen, in September of 2022, a developer posted in the forum. He says, hey, ISO is around the corner. We don't have the proper messaging formats to, read those messages, so forth and so on. A month later, Cosmos SDK can now read ISO messaging. That also means that every other chain running Cosmos SDK can also read ISO messaging. This includes Crypto.com, Request, Tezos, Kava, Near Protocol. The list goes on. All right. Just look at Cosmos's ecosystem. It's insane. And then the last surprise was the Casper network. Right? And then when you really think about the Casper network, it's not a full surprise. But when it comes to ISO, it's their relationship with the Hyperledger Foundation. Hyperledger, we already know, running ISO compatible messaging 24/7. So it makes you think the other projects in the Hyperledger Foundation that currently don't have it, could they go to the board, to the head, and be like, hey, we need some APIs for this ISO thing? It's possible, in my opinion. That's how Casper is going to take advantage of the ISO migration. And that's very interesting because Casper also has another upgrade coming to their POS system. It's a similar setup to what XDC did with the XD POS 2.0. I have to look more into it, but I'm pretty sure that upgrade is going to open the doors for that ISO, for ISO messaging. Now, I've gone over the coins, the new coins that popped up in this research. What didn't come up was some of the other projects on the ISO list. IOTA could not find any APIs. Not worried about that though. Hedera did not find any APIs. Algorand did not find any APIs. Cardano, I did not find any APIs. I did not find. Now, this isn't to discredit those projects, and I'm not saying that they can't in the future create those APIs. Cardano is leaning heavily into micropayments, so at some point they're going to have to. And the same story goes for IOTA. IOTA is on a completely different tier though. They're handling the green trade finance, stuff like that, IoT. However, those standards are still going to trickle into IOTA's ecosystem. So at some point, like I said, they're going to have to. And here's another thing too. I found this pyramid here, right? And you'll see here, one of the companies listed on this pyramid, this ISO pyramid, is Tata Communications. That's a Hedera Governing Council member. Now, like I said, I haven't found the documentation that talks about Hedera's APIs in relation to ISO 2022, but they are working with Tata. And if Tata is leaning in that direction and they go to use an Hedera application or service, Hedera is going to have to get that API together. And that's the crucial piece here, guys. That's the theme to this entire video, is the next stage for ISO is going to center around APIs. And like I said, anyone can create an API. And with that, this means that all of these projects could be ISO compliant before the end of the year. Because now it's going to be a benchmark. It's going to be a standard feature that you must have in order to compete. That's what I kept telling people when I grasped the understanding of the ISO messaging part. It all made sense. It's not a compliance situation. It's not an elite group of this, that, and whatever the heck they're telling you. These are messaging standards that, like I've just shown you, affects everything. And it's going to be the crux, the lifeblood of the future payment system. It's what's going to allow the future payment system to become instant. So, like I said, this changes everything. And I had to get this video out before the 20th because then I'd just be, I'd be like jumping on a trend like everybody else. But y'all know that ain't me. So with that, that's all I got for this one. If you found value, of course, leave a comment down below, share the video, smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts. How long have you been holding ISO projects? Are you about to double down now with this information? And also, I want to know, I'm encouraging this. Questions. Ask me questions, guys, about this stuff, because that's the only way we're going to get to it. That's the only way we're going to get there, is if we ask questions and we talk through these answers. So, with that, as always, I'm Wade Teamer. Thank you for watching DHN. If that money is digital, so is the hustle. I'll see y'all in the next video. Wait, pause. You need to watch this. Okay? And I'll see you in the next video.